at 42 million.
The art world, where paintings change hands for fortunes.
So, thank you very much.
But for every known masterpiece, there may be another still waiting to be discovered.
This is it.
International art dealer Philip Mould and I have teamed up to hunt for lost works by great artists. We use old-fashioned detective work and state-of-the-art science to get to the truth.
Science can enable us to see beyond the human eye.
Oh, my goodness.
Every case is packed with surprise and intrigue.
Is it, or isn't it a Freud, then?
But not every painting is quite what it seems.
Gosh, why didn't I notice that before?
It's a journey that can end in joy.
There is enough to support the conclusion that it is by Tom Roberts.
Or bitter disappointment.
I don't think it's a work by Gauguin. I'm very sorry.
In this episode, can we prove this is a lost work by one of the biggest names in British art, Thomas Gainsborough?
Could yours be the missing picture?
That's what we're here to find out, isn't it?
Our investigation takes us on a thrilling journey back through time,
Tantalisingly close.
Oh, that's so close.
where we uncover long-lost secrets.
I don't believe it. I mean, isn't this absolutely staggering?
We encounter an artful pretender in a story full of twists and turns.
This could be rather tricky for you, Philip. Is there a chance that
You and the Gainsborough Authority 20 years ago got it wrong?
And with a 19th century art market flooded with Gainsborough imitations, we're in treacherous waters.
Reject?
It may be that a faker is repurposing an earlier canvas.
We're called to the far corners of the country to help viewers investigate their mysterious works of art. This case brings us to Cumbria and the Lake District. Nestled in the foothills is the village of Burneside, home to one of the country's oldest paper mills.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello there.
Hello.
We've come to meet Chairman Mark Cropper, who's asked for our help. He's the 6th generation to work at the family factory, and he believes he may have inherited a lost masterpiece.
Right, so here it is.
God, how fascinating.
Well, so we've got a group of rustic figures beneath what looks like an oak tree, clustered around a cooking pot.
And a rather miserable-looking donkey.
And this was a theme, the idea of figures next to trees, next to a wood, that was returned to again and again by the greatest of those landscape painters of the 18th century, Thomas Gainsborough.
And you think this could be a Gainsborough, do you?
Well, I hope it might be.
Thomas Gainsborough is one of the most celebrated names in British art. Born in Suffolk in 1727, he made his reputation and his fortune as a society portrait painter. He was an artist of choice amongst the aristocracy. But if portraiture was his work, landscape painting was his pleasure. Gainsborough was drawn to the countryside. Its character and atmosphere, its people and animals inspired a lifetime's work. During the 18th century, there was little appetite for landscape paintings, but Gainsborough helped elevate the genre, inspiring a whole new tradition in British landscape art. Could Mark's picture be by the same artist that had helped start this revolution?
So how did you come by this painting?
The picture's been in my family for generations. I don't know how many generations, but certainly several.
And do you like it?
I'm not sure I love it. It's quite gloomy and dark. I mean, it might partly be the condition. It needs to have some more love shown to it, I think.
So what makes you think it might be a work by the great Thomas Gainsborough?
It was attributed to Gainsborough at one time. We've got a 1920s valuation that names it as a Gainsborough, and it had a Gainsborough plaque on it at one time.
So what went wrong with it then?
Well, it was valued in the late 1970s in my father's time, and he was told that it was by another artist called Barker of Bath.
Oh, Thomas Barker of Bath. Bit of a bin name, I'm afraid.
Oh dear.
So who was Barker of Bath?
Well, a very competent artist who could emulate quite closely Gainsborough's techniques, was highly influenced by his work, sometimes copied them, and is infuriating because time and time again, when people think they have a Gainsborough, they're told it's a Barker of Bath.
Well, this has actually even been downgraded since then to a follower of Barker of Bath. Oh, no. So it's even worse. It's even worse than that.
No, that's bad.
So that's why the name's been scratched off in anger there, is it?
Yet my father took the label off and threw it away.
So the label that said Gainsborough ended up,
yeah.
What, in the bin?
In the bin.
I feel slightly bad asking, but I mean, if this is by an imitator of Gainsborough, what's it worth compared to if it is by the great man himself?
Well, by a sort of follower, we could be talking high hundreds, perhaps low thousands. If it's by Thomas Gainsborough, then therein lies the magic. It could be £100,000.
Wow, that's quite a difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think you'd like it a bit more if we managed to attach the name Gainsborough?
Yes, without a doubt.
And then perhaps you could put that right.
I would love to stick the label back on it. That would be fantastic.
Mark has delved into the family archive to see if there's any documentation that might give us clues to the past life of his picture.
So here is the earliest written record we've got of the picture in the family's possession. It's dated 1929. It's a valuation.
And Ella Green?
Ella Green is the name of the house where the family were living at the time.
Oh, yes, look, Gainsborough, loud and proud.
It's there, yeah.
Oil painting, landscape with gypsies around a fire. Oh, it was in the telephone room. It's rather marvellous, isn't it? How fantastic. So here it is, 1929, Gainsborough. And then what happened?
Well, we've got the 1977 valuation, and in that, the attribution has changed.
Well, it's a wooded landscape with a gypsy encampment, but it's Thomas Barker of Bath.
No mention of Gainsborough.
mention of Gainsborough.
He's gone.
So if it is a Gainsborough, what will that mean to you?
Well, it would be amazing. Yeah, I would really be very happy, of course. In a way, equally fascinating is just to find out more and trace, you know, and take that journey back. You know, I'm really, really excited about just doing that.
Back in London, we're getting to grips with the challenge ahead. Mark's picture is an image I recognise because the same scene appears in a famous Gainsborough print. So this is a print of a painting by Thomas Gainsborough of the same subject that he did in around about 1753 or 4. But here's the intriguing bit. For many years, the original painting from which this print was taken was considered lost. Does it look familiar?
Well, yes. I mean, it's very similar to Mark's picture, except it's in reverse.
Yes, it is. It's a mirror image. But when a painting is turned into a print, the process creates a reverse image.
So are you saying then that Mark's painting could be the lost Gainsborough?
Well, before I can answer that, I need to tell you about a picture that I had dealings with around about 20 years ago. Back in 1999, I was getting known for specialising in Gainsborough, having discovered several works by the artist. I was shown a picture that looked just like Mark's painting. The owner believed he'd found the lost Gainsborough landscape, and I thought it looked right. It had been doubted as a genuine work by Thomas Gainsborough since the 1960s, but when it came into the gallery, we cleaned it and restored it and showed it to the then authority on the works of Thomas Gainsborough, who accepted it as an original, and it was then sold at auction.
So hang on then, what does this mean for Mark's picture?
Well, Mark's picture wasn't around at the time, and I have to say, seeing it now gives me pause for thought. Mark's picture has been buried in a private collection, hidden from public view. None of Gainsborough's authorities knew of its existence. I can't help but wonder what they'd make of it now that it's emerged from the shadows. This painting looks old. The colours, the blues and the reds, they have a mellow 18th century appearance. Just the sort of thing that you would expect in the 1700s, in the same century that Gainsborough was painting. You can see crackly old drying cracks.
Yes. And these cracks aren't easy to fake, are they?
They're not impossible to fake, but those look real.
And what about the figures? Do they look as if Gainsborough could have painted them, do you think?
They look to me convincingly well painted. They're swift, they're not laboured. And it's almost as if they're characters on a stage that have been rather cleverly lit. And I like that. This is a painting of quality. It is by someone who can unquestionably paint. And on the back of Mark's picture, there is a cluster of clues that could shed light on its mysterious past.
Well, this is interesting. Look, we've got all sorts of things here. Labels, stencils. This is great. This is a picture that's had a history.
Yeah, this looks like a picture that's been through galleries, sale rooms, possibly private collections. There's enough here for us to want to find out more.
This could be rather tricky for you, couldn't it, Philip? I mean, is there a chance that Mark's picture is the lost Gainsborough?
And this other one, well, you and the Gainsborough Authority 20 years ago got it wrong.
Well, I hate to say it, but I think we've got to explore that possibility. See, not everybody got behind the attribution at the time. Some people thought it was a copy and that the original picture was still out there to be found.
Is there any chance of seeing that painting in the flesh?
Unfortunately, we don't know where it is because after it was sold, it disappeared into a private collection. But the point is, Mark's picture has now turned up, and we've got to establish what it is. If it turns out to be the lost Gainsborough, then we'll have to set the record straight. In search of evidence, Mark and I are heading to the Royal Academy in London. Gainsborough was one of the founding members of this great art institution. It holds a fine collection of works by the artist. We've come here to take a closer look at the series of prints that replicated Gainsborough's original Gypsies picture. The existence of these early reproductions made the whereabouts of the original painting one of the great mysteries of British landscape art, a mystery that has caught Mark's attention.
When my father told me that this picture had a Gainsborough label on it at one time, of course I did the natural thing. I went online and I found an image.
Which is a print done by Gainsborough himself, copying his own oil painting called The Gypsies. Now, what is really thrilling is that it is a replica of what could be a lost picture.
Well, when I found that out, you can imagine I was quite excited about it.
No wonder you were excited. No wonder you're excited.
Yeah.
So the big question is, could yours be the missing picture?
That's what we're here to find out, isn't it?
Before we get carried away, I need to address an obvious concern. Gainsborough's print was published in 1759 and again in 1764. On sale in print shops, his Gypsies thus became a famous image. This gives us quite a tempering thought, because if this image was freely available, people could have copied it.
Yes. Now that's sort of back down to earth, isn't it? This could easily be a copy of that.
Over the years, copies made of this famous print have masqueraded as Gainsborough's original Gypsies. I've been considering whether Mark's picture could be one of those pretenders. I'm going to give you some reassuring thoughts on this, because I don't think that your painting could be a copy of this print, for two reasons. The first is, this is in reverse. This is the mirror image. So if you were painting a painting based on a print like that, you'd have done it that way round.
Yeah.
But this is not. But also, have you noticed that there are details in this print that you actually don't get in yours? By flipping the print around, you can see that certain features are missing from Mark's painting. Now, if this was a copy of the print, you'd expect to see the tree at the edge of the picture, the birds in the sky, and the baby in the basket. I mean, whoever was painting your picture would have incorporated those if they were basing it on the print. So I cannot conceive of anyone painting your picture on the basis of this print. That really does leave the option that your painting could be the lost Gainsborough, or if it's not, then it's a copy based on the original painting by Gainsborough.
Well, I guess we've got to find that out, but it's a good start, isn't it?
It's a very good place to be.
Back at the gallery, I'm trying to find out more about Gainsborough's original Gypsies painting. Fortunately for us, the two great Gainsborough scholars of the 20th century, Sir Ellis Waterhouse and John Hayes, tried to track it down.
This is the catalogue raisonné of Gainsborough's landscapes, the authorised list of his works compiled by John Hayes in 1982. And there is an entry for the lost Gainsborough. And what's brilliant is that the provenance of the lost Gainsborough is listed here. I mean, normally we have to do all this work with a painting, but it's all written down here. It's the list of sales and auctions it went through, who owned it and when. And this is such a gift for us, because if the provenance of Mark's picture matches what's written down here, then that could mean that Mark's is the lost Gainsborough. It's like a map for us to follow through time. And the first place on that map is Shugborough Hall. So that's where we need to go.
We're on the trail of Gainsborough's lost landscape. The catalogue raisonné has led us to Staffordshire and this glorious stately home, Shugborough Hall. Built in the 1740s, this was once the ancestral pile of the Earls of Lichfield. Their vast art collection once adorned these walls. We've been searching through the archives to find if there's anything to link Mark's picture to the lost landscape.
Now, Mark, the reason I brought you here to Shugborough Hall is that, according to the catalogue raisonné, this is where the lost Gainsborough once hung.
Oh, right.
And it was owned by this man, Thomas William Anson, who was the first Earl of Lichfield. And he liked to party. He had extravagant parties here. And he liked to gamble. At cards, on the horses.
I think I can see where this is going.
So much so that in 1842, he was forced to sell off the entire contents of this place. Been a 16-day kind of fire sale. And on the 9th day, have a look at this.
So we've got Gainsborough here, lot 77, an upright landscape with gypsies in front, seated around a fire at the foot of an old stump of a tree.
So does that sound like your painting?
Well, it's promising.
So the question is, of course, is your picture this picture?
I don't know.
Well, neither do I. Not at this stage, but we have made a promising start.
We found a reassuring description that matches Mark's picture, but there aren't any labels that prove with certainty his is the Shugborough Hall painting. Tantalisingly, though, I may have discovered a link to a later owner in the provenance of the lost picture.
There's one rather interesting name here, which is...
Henry Graves.
So this is a picture of the back of your painting.
Yeah.
What does it say there? Let me make it bigger for you.
Henry Graves. Sorry, this is really exciting.
It is exciting. It's hugely promising. It doesn't prove that your painting is the lost Gainsborough. It doesn't prove it, but what it does show, at least according to Sir Ellis Waterhouse and John Hayes, that your painting shares one detail of the same provenance as the lost Gainsborough.
That is brilliant. It really is. I wasn't expecting that at all. My sort of balloon of hope has been inflated.
We're not there yet, not by a country mile, but we have made a really promising start.
Back in London, I'm hoping to unlock clues in the painting itself, so I've sent it to the Courtauld Institute for Forensic Analysis. Professor Aviva Bernstock is one of the world's leading authorities in the scientific study of art. Her research could provide vital evidence to prove whether Mark's painting is a genuine Gainsborough or an imposter by another hand.
So the big question is this the lost Thomas Gainsborough landscape? And part of the problem is the catalogue raisonné, irritatingly, doesn't give us the dimensions, the all-important measurements of this lost picture.
Yeah, no, it says here, canvas, size, unknown.
I mean, there's nothing more annoying than something that's unknown and rather crucial. Except I think we might be making a bit of progress. On the back of this painting, you'll recall there's a label which identifies its painting's ownership by Henry Graves, and here he is.
All right.
Henry Graves was a print seller and art dealer, and according to the catalogue raisonné, the lost Gainsborough was with him in 1885.
1885 is a very big year for Thomas Gainsborough, because in that year, the Grosvenor Gallery, a very significant institution, held a major exhibition of the artist's work. There were 200 of his works. They were lent by the great and the good of the day.
We've got the Queen at the top here, so you don't get better than that.
It gets better still, because in the exhibition catalogue itself, number 202, would you like to read it out?
Yeah. Gypsies, lent by Henry Graves, Esquire.
But the beautiful added extra are the dimensions of this lost picture.
It says canvas, 29 times 24.5 inches.
So here's the canvas.
OK, I see what this is for.
Will the dimensions of Mark's picture match up with the painting that hung in this major Gainsborough exhibition?
Right, that's 30 inches, or nearly 30 inches. OK.
And width?
By 25.
So close, but not...
Yeah, it's not a slam dunk, is it?
Oh, hang on a minute. I think the painting's been relined. You can see that the actual painted surface is smaller than the lining fabric. So perhaps we can just try and measure the picture plane itself. So that's exactly 29 inches. And this is 24.5 inches. So...
We're back on, hey?
That's it.
Yeah?
Well, you know what this means, don't you? It means that your picture was included in this extraordinarily illustrious exhibition in 1885. You know, the trophy works of Thomas Gainsborough coming from all different parts of the country, arriving under one roof, and your painting was there with all the others.
I can't believe it.
Now, it doesn't 100% tell us that this is by Gainsborough, but what it does show is, at that date, in 1885, yours was considered to be a trophy Gainsborough.
That is amazing. You know, I would never, ever have guessed. It really is incredible.
Across town, I'm continuing the provenance investigation. According to the catalogue raisonné, the lost landscape passed through Christie's auction house 3 times. A stencil on the back of Mark's picture looks similar in style to those used by Christie's. I'm heading there to see if I can establish a link to any of those sales. Archivist Linda MacLeod has agreed to help.
Oh, thank you very much. So, Linda, what I'm wondering is if this number means anything to you. Is that a Christie's number?
It is a Christie's number. All items that come into Christie's are assigned a stock number. This particular stock number refers to 1881, 1883 period.
OK.
And this stock number, 55N, refers to a consignment of 2 books.
Oh, that was all going so well.
Unless we can link the stock number on the back of Mark's picture to these sales of Gainsborough's lost gypsies, our provenance search is over. But Linda may have made a discovery.
I had a look at the 27th of May 1882 sale, and when you look through the volume, here we've got the gypsies.
Mm-hmm. So that looks like the right painting.
And look at the stock number. It's 555N. Tantalisingly close.
Oh, that's so close. 555N as opposed to 55N.
We can clearly see here that's Henry Graves, who's consigned 12 pictures.
Oh, now that is a name that we are now very familiar with, Henry Graves, because we know, according to the catalogue raisonné, that he owned the lost Gainsborough. And what's the date again?
1882.
Well, that is genius, but it's... Oh, so close.
Yes,
but it's not quite the same number.
It isn't. It's not the same number. So I wonder whether there may be another number obscured on the stretcher underneath that piece of paper that's been glued.
Gosh, that's frustrating. Don't you want to just rip it off? You're not actually supposed to do that, of course. Oh, so close, but not quite.
Tempting though it is to rip off that piece of paper, we've come to the Courtauld Institute so that Aviva can try a less invasive approach.
The reason I brought you here, Mark, is because there's something rather intriguing on the back of your painting. Now, I'm not 100% sure about it, so I'm not going to tell you yet. I'm going to keep you in suspense, if that's all right.
That's fine.
Aviva, do your magic.
Aviva is using an infrared camera, which can detect carbon-based materials, including ink.
Oh, this is worth it.
The infrared rays should penetrate through the paper to reveal if there's another number hidden underneath.
The moment of truth.
Okay. There we are.
Bingo.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to see. Thank you, Aviva. Right. Can you see on the left-hand side it says 55N by that scrap of paper?
Yeah.
And Aviva, through her magic, has seen what's under the scrap of paper, and it's actually 555N.
Well, actually, it's not magic. It's just the infrared detector allows us to see through the paper. I didn't even remove the paper, but you can see the 5 underneath.
Yeah, what does it mean?
And the reason that matters is because stock number 555N was given to your painting by Christie's May 27, 1882. And it was listed for sale as an authentic Gainsborough Gypsies.
By Christie's. Yeah.
By Christie's. So we are in lockstep with the catalogue raisonné here.
And it's one and the same. Great.
The provenance trail for Mark's picture is looking promising, but I need to address an obvious concern. What about the picture that sold as the Lost Gainsborough nearly 20 years ago? What provenance did it have? To find out, I've come to the Paul Mellon Centre for Studies in British Art. It holds the opinion files of the great Gainsborough scholars Sir Ellis Waterhouse and John Hayes. They had the authority to accept a work as by Gainsborough or chuck it on the reject pile. I'm hoping to find out more about the picture that claimed the Lost Gainsborough's title. And it turns out that over the years, there have been other contenders.
Going through this lot, I'm just beginning to get a sense of what we're up against, because there are several pictures pertaining to be Gainsborough's gypsies. So let's look at this one, for example. So this is a sort of reverse image of Mark's picture, if you like, and it's clearly a copy of the print. So that got put on the reject pile.
Other pretenders are pastiches, where an artist has painted a picture in the style of the gypsies.
Reject. So that's a reject as well. So you've got a little collection of broken dreams here for various owners. And then we have this picture, which was accepted as by Gainsborough. And this is the one that Philip saw some 20 years ago, and he helped get it authenticated by John Hayes. Now, if you look at the sales catalogue for that picture, what I've noticed is that the provenance has the caveat, possibly right at the beginning, a pretty sizable caveat. But a chunk of the provenance is the same as for Mark's picture. And we know that now because we've matched some of the labels on the back of his painting to sales and exhibitions listed here. So how can you have the same provenance for two different paintings? What's going on?
We've not been able to track down the present owners of the painting, which was sold in 2001. But the son of the previous owner has agreed to tell me what he knows about the picture.
Hi there.
Hello, Fiona.
Nice to see you.
John Day's father, Harold Day, ran a gallery specialising in East Anglian art. He spotted the picture at a country sale in Suffolk in the 1960s.
My father believed that it was an original Thomas Gainsborough, but the experts at the time weren't prepared to authenticate it, mainly because it was still covered in old varnish and hadn't been cleaned for years.
So what happened to it?
So we put it into store, and then in the 1990s we called in Philip Mould, and he arranged to have it cleaned. And subsequently...
He likes a good clean, Philip. He's always suggesting a good clean.
And subsequently showed it to the expert of the day, John Hayes, and we got a lovely letter from him.
OK. Dear Mr. Day, my view following conservation is that your picture is indeed the original Gainsborough of this subject, as you suspected when you bought it just over 40 years ago.
And of course, here it is on the cover of a catalogue.
And is this your father's writing?
It is, yes.
This Gainsborough was discovered by me. What's that, in Suffolk?
In Suffolk.
Circa 1960, Harold Day.
Yes.
So he was very proud.
Yes, it validated his original opinion.
What was your father able to find out about the provenance of his picture?
Well, my father's painting, when he bought it, had been relined, rebacked onto a new canvas, probably 100 years ago, and it had a new wooden stretcher at the back, so any evidence and labels would have been lost.
Oh, so there was nothing on the back at all?
No.
So now you've got another painting that's come along and is vying for the Gainsborough crown. What do you make of that?
But I'm very confident my father's original opinion was correct. And of course it was backed up by John Hayes, and of course Sotheby's successfully sold the painting as well.
So this judgment stands?
It does, yes, as far as I'm concerned.
John clearly thinks his father was right about his picture, and despite the lack of provenance, and the expert at the time agreed on stylistic grounds. But Mark's picture has better provenance. It has more evidence that links it with the past life of the lost Gainsborough. Crucially, the expert at the time, John Hayes, never saw Mark's picture. He never even knew it existed. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but I can't help wondering what he'd make of it.
Back at the Courtauld Institute, Aviva is continuing her technical study of Mark's picture. She's using imaging techniques to reveal what the eye can't see. Infrared and X-ray photography can penetrate deep into the canvas, unlocking clues within the layers of paint. We've been summoned to the lab because she's found something quite unexpected. Look at the landscape and a remarkable discovery will appear. A mysterious figure buried beneath the paint.
This is the infrared.
I don't believe it.
Oh my God.
That's utterly astonishing.
It's amazing, isn't it? So you can see very clearly a beautiful young woman underneath the gypsies.
I mean, isn't this absolutely staggering? I mean, all the time we've been looking at this picture in a sort of phantom-like way. Through the branches, she's been looking at us.
It was completely unexpected.
The infrared image has partially uncovered a long-lost portrait. Will an X-ray reveal her further?
So here it is.
Whoa.
It's really, really incredible.
So here you can see her much more clearly. You can see her completely painted. You can hardly see the painting on top, although if you look closely, you can see the highlights of the leaves here.
I'm actually amazed. I almost don't believe it, to be honest.
I have to say, it does beg a belief, doesn't it?
Well, it's one of the clearest images I've ever seen. It completely took me by surprise. I had no idea that we would find this portrait underneath.
I mean, I find it so poignant that this must be the first time in what, I don't know, 250 years, possibly, that she's surfaced, she's come back to life.
Who is she?
Although it's a wonderful thought that there is a portrait beneath this landscape, I can't see how Gainsborough could have painted this.
This startling discovery could spell bad news for Mark's picture.
Looking at her face, looking at the way that her dress is done, looking at the way that her hair is swept back, this is not from the period of Thomas Gainsborough. Could be, I don't know, 1700 to about 1720. A good generation before Thomas Gainsborough.
Before he started painting.
Yeah. Whoever painted the landscape on top, for whatever reason, has repurposed an earlier picture. We need to ask them why.
Yeah, I'm a bit more pained now about her appearing, lovely though she is.
This could be a major setback. Back at the gallery, I'm updating Fiona.
I wonder who she is.
Well, whoever she is, she's not by Gainsborough.
Well, is it possible, though, that Gainsborough painted what's on top?
I'm afraid I've not seen any evidence of Gainsborough reusing another artist's work.
But it's a possibility, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it's not impossible if an artist is really hard up that they would use somebody else's canvas. And we do know that in the 1750s, he'd slightly hit the buffers. There's a really poignant letter to his landlady.
I called yesterday upon a friend in hopes of borrowing money to pay you, but was disappointed. I'm sorry it happened so. But you know I can't make money any more than yourself. Oh, dear. And this lovely signature at the bottom, Thomas Gainsborough.
But what's really interesting is the date of this letter. It's been dated to 1752 to 3, exactly the moment that we know that he was painting the gypsies.
So it's possible, surely, then, that Gainsborough did reuse another artist's canvas because he couldn't afford to buy one of his own.
But it's also possible that someone other than Gainsborough reused the old canvas.
This does raise a rather sinister thought. If you were a faker and you wanted to create the illusion of age, you might well use an old canvas. And then, of course, there's the possibility that a copyist might have just simply used it because it was there to hand, you know, a nice-looking canvas of the right size.
I wonder if we can find out who she is and who painted her. That might get us closer to finding out who painted the scene on top.
Yeah, but I wish you luck, because this is a formulaic face painted at a time when there are so many other portraits that look extremely similar. It's a Herculean task.
Not one to pass up a challenge, I'm heading to the Whit Library on the trail of our mystery sitter. It holds over 2 million reproductions of works of art. I'm hoping their files of early 18th century portraits might give us some clue as to who this woman was and who might have painted her. That might bring us closer to finding out who painted the gypsies' landscape.
Well, Philip wasn't kidding when he said this would be a challenge. I mean, if we just take the two leading portrait artists of the early 18th century, there are 20 boxes of works by Godfrey Kneller and 7 by Michael Dahl, and then each box contains hundreds of portraits. So we've had a researcher go through all of them, and they are remarkably similar. And that's before you go on to the other artists of the period.
We haven't found her yet, but I'm hoping some innovative tech can help. The Whit is in the final stages of a groundbreaking project to scan, catalogue and make available online 260,000 images of British art. Facial recognition technology can search through the database to find a face in a crowd.
Hello, Fiona.
Hi, Tom. Nice to see you.
Head of Digital, Tom Bilson, has agreed to show me how the software can seek out art history doppelgangers.
Oh, my God. So you're using this technology, which basically takes a face, in this case mine, and then searches through the whole library, or everything you've digitised so far.
Yes, that's correct.
To see who else looks like that.
Yes, similar eyes, similar nose, similar jawline, similar hair. They all go to making a match. Let's try the next one.
Oh, no. No, that's such a terrible photograph. Oh, my God, you think I look like her?
Well, the software does.
Right, God, that was a bad haircut.
We'll try number 3.
Oh, so now I'm pre-Raphaelite. I can sort of see the similarities. It's that eyebrow, isn't it, that I get teased about so much. Wow, this is so cool. It's like something out of a sort of spy movie or something. And what about Our Lady, then? Have you managed to find her?
Well, we've had a good look. We found hundreds that appear like our picture or share similarities.
Gosh, so have you managed to narrow it down at all?
Well, we did a search on the face, and these are our top 8. They all share certain characteristics.
Well, they do, actually, don't they? Because they've all got this very narrow, straight nose, these doe-like eyes. But they're not her, are they?
No.
And from this period, sort of late 17th to early 18th century, it was an artistic school of thought at the time to paint women all more or less in the same way, with very similar features. So that makes it so much harder, doesn't it?
Yes, they all share the same timeless image. They're wearing the same clothing. All the images, I guess, look like each other.
Gosh, we're so close. I mean, this is brilliant technology, I have to say. This is absolutely amazing. It would take weeks to try and do this.
Yes, easily.
Any other way,
easily.
yeah. It's just our bad luck that we've happened to have fallen upon a time where there was this ideal of painting women, and they all look the same. God, how frustrating.
This portrait raises uncomfortable questions. Did a forger or imitator reuse an old canvas? Worryingly, Mark's picture was downgraded to a copy by Barker of Bath in the 70s. It's now time to interrogate Barker as a key suspect. During the 18th century, Bath was the place to be for an artist wishing to make a name. Gainsborough prospered here for 16 years until he left in 1774. A decade later, the young and talented Thomas Barker arrived, hoping for fame and fortune. I need to consider the possibility that Barker was the hand behind Mark's painting, so I've come to the Victoria Art Gallery to examine his works. Barker was skilled at imitating other artists. His ability to paint in the style of Gainsborough prompted one commentator to call him an imposter at the brush, condemning his works deceptions.
This is a self-portrait of the young Thomas Barker of Bath. And look what he's painting. A landscape, upright, rather Gainsborough-esque in colouring and composition. In fact, it's not a million miles away from the Gypsies. Standing over him is Charles Spackman, a local entrepreneur who took Barker under his wing and paid for his training. He looks like the hard taskmaster that we know he was. He got Barker to go around the big houses in Bath and copy some of the works of the masters. It's said that on one occasion, he got him to paint the same picture 130 times in order to get it right.
So Barker copied pictures hanging in and around Bath. And of course, works by Gainsborough were in plentiful supply here.
This painting, Landscape with Woodcutter by Thomas Gainsborough, was owned by an eminent Bath physician called Dr. Rice Charlton. And this is Thomas Barker's copy of it. It's only a black and white photograph because the original is missing.
This shows that Barker wasn't just painting in the style of Gainsborough, he was making exact copies. To determine whether Mark's picture is a copy by this artful imitator, Aviva has joined me to have a closer look at Barker's techniques and pigments. History has not been kind to Barker, and many of his pictures are now consigned to museum basements.
We're looking at not one, but 4 Thomas Barkers. It's almost as if you're meeting the man in terms of trying to get to know what he's about. And what blows you away is how much he's trying to be like Gainsborough, and actually almost succeeding, don't you think?
Yes.
In every picture, there's that very fluid sky and that transparent, if I can look at it with my torch, there's that transparent foliage. And I see that in Gainsborough quite a lot. And then, of course, the subjects themselves. Landscapes with figures occupied in some rustic activity. Yeah, it feels to me that we've got to the stage where our eye can only tell us so much. It's essential to know what's going on inside.
Well, I think we can look at the surface of pictures and we can see how the paint is handled, but it might also be useful to see what the layer structure is, what the composition of the pigments are, to see whether we can see similarities.
Aviva is taking tiny samples of paint from Barker's work so that she can compare the pigments to those used in Mark's picture. It's clear Barker had enough skill to make a convincing copy of Gainsborough's Gypsies, but he'd have needed access to the original. So where was it hanging at the time?
To find out, I'm back on the Provenance Trail. The catalogue raisonné tells us when Barker was in Bath, Gainsborough's Lost Gypsies was owned by a man named John Wiltshire. And guess what? He lived at a grand estate just a few miles away. This is Shockerwick House. This glorious mansion is now a care home. Several works by Gainsborough were once proudly on display here. And we know this because there was a sale of John Wiltshire's collection in 1867.
So here we have the catalogue of sale of the pictures that belonged to John Wiltshire after his death. So the celebrated Shockerwick collection, including 7 fine works, no less, of T. Gainsborough. Now, amongst these works by Gainsborough, if you get to page 11, what have we got here?
So we've got T. Gainsborough, a landscape, the Gypsies repast. This is our scene. I mean, well, it's not necessarily the same picture, but it is the same
It's the same
composition.
scene. So how did it come into the possession of John Wiltshire?
John Wiltshire inherited many of his pictures from his grandfather, Walter Wiltshire, and he was a friend of Gainsborough's. Walter would invite the artist to come sketching here, and it's known that Gainsborough gave him pictures.
This idea that Gainsborough gave his paintings to Walter Wiltshire appears to be backed up, at any rate, by this ad for the 1867 sale. And it talks of the celebrated pictures by Gainsborough from Shockerwick Park. And it mentions a gypsy's repast, which may or may not be your painting. Yeah. And it says, all of which were obtained direct from the artist. So all the Gainsboroughs that were sold in the 1867 sale, according to the ad for the sale, came directly from Gainsborough himself.
Well, that's news.
That is totally new. So if this is right, it's a trail that takes us all the way back to Gainsborough.
Exactly. It takes our picture here the whole way back, if indeed that is one and the same. And have you made any link between our picture and the Wiltshire picture?
No, I'm afraid. We just cannot find any evidence, any provenance to link it.
That's so annoying.
It's really annoying. Even though we've now got all this new information, the only provenance we have for your particular picture takes us back to 1882. So the provenance isn't quite getting us there.
So what we're left with is actually just looking at the picture itself.
The painting itself.
With the provenance trail hitting a dead end, I'm hoping science can help. Aviva is taking samples of paint from Mark's picture so that she can compare the pigments to those used by Gainsborough and then those by his imitator, Barker of Bath.
Hello, Rika. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
We've invited conservator Rika Jones to lend her expertise. Rika is a leading expert in the methods and materials of British artists and has an extensive knowledge of Gainsborough's techniques. We're going to examine a cross-section of Mark's picture, looking at it layer by layer like slices of a cake. The first layer is the ground, the primer applied to the canvas to create the background on which to paint.
First of all, the canvas was primed with this orange-coloured or orange and white-coloured ground, which you can see here, and then the portrait was painted on top of that.
We know Gainsborough didn't paint the portrait, but could the orange ground give us some clue as to who did?
That, to me, looks like a ground of somebody who trained in the 17th century and may have been working into the 18th. I've seen very similar in the work of Michael Dahl.
That's really exciting. This is progress. I mean, we always knew there was a rather beautiful, mysterious face beneath. But we can now give the artist a name, a likely name, Michael Dahl, you know, one of the leading portrait painters of the early 18th century.
But it's the artist of the landscape that we need to identify. Can the pigments help us date the picture to the 18th century when Gainsborough was actually painting?
Well, it looks like the portrait was then painted out with a very dark paint layer, and on top of that the landscape was painted. None of the pigments that I found in this picture were invented in the 19th century, so I do think this was made in the 18th century.
I mean, that gives me a warm feeling. I mean, it rules out a 19th century faker or a 20th century faker, doesn't it?
The likelihood of its being a 19th century artist, because it's got no 19th century pigments, is remote.
Well, rather happily, that still keeps Gainsborough in the frame, doesn't it?
Well, technically, yes, it does.
But Gainsborough's imitator, Barker of Bath, was also painting in the 18th century.
Have you seen anything in this painting that is redolent of Barker of Bath?
Well, I have looked at a few paintings by Barker of Bath who loved to paint on a dark grey background. And
like the one we've got here?
Very similar.
So within this rather beautiful 18th century frame, we have two possible artists, Barker of Bath, Thomas Gainsborough. Would you be able to have a further look and give us your thoughts?
I'd be very happy to. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Rika's assessment of Mark's picture is key to our case. Will she find the evidence to take us to Gainsborough?
With the attribution of the picture hanging in the balance, back at the gallery, I've made an 11th hour discovery that might bolster Mark's case.
So here's your picture, Mark. And you'll remember that very exciting moment when we found this beautiful portrait underneath, that then turned out perhaps not to be quite so exciting.
Yeah, it makes me nervous you showing me that again.
Well, the thing is, as we know, Gainsborough could not have painted her because it's much too early.
Yeah.
So for your painting to be by Gainsborough, he must have reused another artist's canvas. Now, the difficulty was
that we couldn't find any examples of Gainsborough doing that, which obviously casts doubt on your picture.
Yeah.
But hot off the press. Just last month, the current Gainsborough authority, Hugh Belsey, has published this catalogue raisonné of Gainsborough's portraits. And in it, look at your face. You don't know whether it's going to be good or bad, do you? In it, he has a picture of this beautiful painting, man and woman in a landscape, and it's dated 1753, which is a significant date for us.
Yeah, no, that's when the Gypsies is meant to have been painted.
This was X-rayed.
Okay.
What do we have here?
Well, we have another lady, don't we?
We do. And crucially, this portrait is not a portrait done by Gainsborough. It was done by a man called William Keble, an artist and friend of Gainsborough. So what this shows is that Gainsborough did reuse other artists' canvases.
At that exact moment?
In the same year that he was painting the Gypsies.
I mean, I know it's circumstantial, but that's pretty good, isn't it?
It's brilliant, Mark. It's more than pretty good. So here we have two pictures. Yours, which you hope is by Gainsborough, with a portrait underneath by another artist. Here we have an attributed, recognised Gainsborough with a portrait underneath done by another artist, and in the same year as the Gypsies.
I mean, if you're trying to build my hopes up, you are.
Well, this looked like a disaster. And now, with this new evidence, it's actually working in your favour. Is it enough? I can't be sure. But it has come just in the nick of time.
The day has come to find out if Mark's picture is a genuine work by Thomas Gainsborough. Hugh Belsey is one of the world's leading Gainsborough authorities. It's his opinion that the art market seeks when it comes to authenticating works believed to be by the artist. We've invited Hugh to undertake a thorough examination of the painting, while Aviva shares the technical findings made by her and Rika Jones. But is there enough evidence to convince him that Mark's picture is the lost Gainsborough landscape?
This is an investigation that started out so well. By decoding the labels on the back of Mark's picture, we now know that a sizable chunk of the provenance of the lost Gainsborough is actually the provenance of Mark's picture. So that's got to mean something. It was exhibited as a Gainsborough in the 1880s. It passed through the hands of the auction house Christie's as a Gainsborough in 1882. What we haven't managed to do, though, is take the provenance of the picture back to Gainsborough himself. And he died in 1788. So that is a big gap.
The discovery of that earlier portrait beneath was initially a problem, but we've now established that Gainsborough would sometimes reuse other people's paintings. All the pigments in the picture are 18th century, of the type that Gainsborough used. There are no 19th century materials. And let us not forget that for almost 100 years, this was known as a work by Thomas Gainsborough, until it was demoted to Thomas Barker of Bath. Barker of Bath, that name we just can't get rid of. It seems to me there's Gainsborough on one hand, Barker of Bath on the other. It's going to be one or the other.
Mark is on his way to the gallery, and we're all about to discover whether his painting has been accepted as a genuine work by Thomas Gainsborough.
Hi, Mark.
Hello. Hi.
So this is it. How are you feeling about it all?
I'm feeling quite uncertain about what I'm going to hear. I honestly do not know what you're going to tell me, whether it actually meets the grade.
And what would it mean to you if it is a Gainsborough? If it is the lost Gainsborough?
I'd be absolutely thrilled. I really would.
Well, I hope it is. I hope it is. Remind us what's at stake here then, Philip.
Well, if this is a genuine painting by Gainsborough, the lost landscape, we could be talking £100,000. If it's by Thomas Barker of Bath, copying Gainsborough, well, that's rather different. It's £2,000 to £3,000. And if it's just by any artist from the 18th century whose name we don't know, perhaps £1,000.
And it's not just the value, though, Philip, is it? Because there's potentially the historical significance of this painting as well.
I mean, it would be
really thrilling if you could add the name Gainsborough. It would become the lost work. People would want to see it. They would talk about it. It would enter art historical consciousness.
But that would mean then, if this is the lost Gainsborough, that other painting that you helped authenticate 20 years ago, that you were wrong.
If it did turn out to be a lost painting, I would just have to take a big gulp and swallow my pride. It wouldn't be the first time, but I have to say I'm as interested as you are to find out the outcome.
Goodness me, I think the stakes are quite high, aren't they?
They are.
It's the moment of truth. Is Mark's picture the lost Gainsborough landscape?
Hello, Hugh.
Hello.
Hello.
So, have you reached your verdict?
I have come to a decision. I've reviewed all the evidence and taking into consideration the remarkable technical research that both Aviva and Rika Jones have done on the picture. I think it's not by Gainsborough, but by Barker of Bath. I feel really mean. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. After all this, what do you think?
Well, I'm gutted.
So this has got the hallmarks of the imitator, Barker of Bath.
Yes, he was very clever, and there's certain ways that he handles paint that is very much like him and not like anybody else, really. It lacks the subtlety that Gainsborough comes up with. It's too tentative somehow. It's too reserved. He would have been much freer than that.
Oh, Mark, I mean, I feel so disappointed for you. I have to say, as I know how much this means to you, what will you do with this now?
Well, I really wanted to stick the Gainsborough label back on it, so that's not gonna happen. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think one thing, if I was being very philosophical about it, is that actually what you've revealed is the most amazing story, the ups and downs, this beautiful woman behind. It's an object of some value somehow in that way, but obviously not monetary.
But there's one final twist in this tale. The portrait buried beneath the landscape is almost certainly by Michael Dahl, one of the leading portrait artists of the early 18th century. The value of a Michael Dahl could be £6,000 to £8,000.
So the picture underneath is actually worth more than the picture on top.
What a mess.
Well, look, you've got a great story to tell.
I think it's got a great story to tell, and I hope that my family might keep hold of it and keep telling the story.
That was one of our trickiest investigations so far. There were so many moments where I thought we were just about to prove it was a Gainsborough, only to be knocked back.
I feel very sorry for Mark, but I do feel we were right in checking this painting out. I mean, art history's always moving on, and it was possible that we could prove this picture. Just so happened we couldn't.
And does this mean that you were right, then, about that landscape you helped attribute 20 years ago?
Well, in my view, the attribution to Gainsborough still stands.
If you think you have an undiscovered masterpiece or other precious object, contact us at bbc.co.uk/fakeorfortune.
Oh, so close, but so far. Hopefully better luck when Fake or Fortune continues same time next week on BBC One.